Welcome to Motivational Humanity. You are not alone.
Have you ever stopped and asked yourself, if my story ended today, what would the last chapter say about me? Would it talk about fear or faith, about what you built or what you buried? Because here's the truth: you are the author of your next chapter, even if you've forgotten how to hold the pen. A few years ago, I sat across from a woman in her late 60s during a workshop on vulnerability. Her name was Margaret. She told me, "Brene, I spent my entire life being who people needed me to be: a good wife, a good mother, a good employee. And now that everyone's grown and gone, I don't know who I am without the titles." Her eyes filled with tears as she whispered, "I thought legacy meant leaving behind something for others, but maybe it also means reclaiming something for myself." That hit me hard, because so many of us do exactly that. We spend decades building a life that looks successful on paper, but inside our hearts are starving for meaning. We build resumes, not memories. We collect achievements, not peace. We chase approval, not authenticity. And then one day, life slows down, and we realize we've been writing someone else's story with our own ink. What story are you writing right now? When people remember your name, what do you hope they'll feel? What do you want your children, or even your future self, to say about the way you lived? And maybe the hardest question of all, if you stripped away every title, every role, every expectation, who would you still be? Because purpose isn't something you find in the next big achievement. It's something you uncover when you finally stop performing and start being. Have you ever paused in the middle of a busy day and asked yourself a question so simple, yet so profound that it stops you in your tracks? If my story ended today, what would the last chapter say about me? Not about what you accomplished or the titles you held, but about the person you truly were. Would it tell of courage, of love, of connection? Or would it quietly whisper about the things you didn't say, the risks you didn't take, the life you didn't dare to live? So many of us go through life carrying invisible weights: the expectations of others, the fear of judgment, the worry that we are not enough. We hustle, we perform, we check off boxes that society handed us decades ago, believing that success equals fulfillment. And for a while, it does, or at least it looks like it does. But deep down, there's a quiet voice inside us, tugging at our hearts, asking, is this really it? Is this the story I want to leave behind? I remember a woman I met named Margaret. She spent her whole life being exactly what everyone around her needed: a devoted mother, a supportive wife, a reliable employee. And when her children grew up and moved on, and the office no longer needed her input, she sat alone with a question that had been waiting decades to be asked. Who am I without all of that? Her story isn't unique. It's the story of countless women and men who dedicated themselves to being indispensable, only to realize they had left themselves out of the narrative. And that realization, while painful, is also freeing, because suddenly you have a choice. You can let the past define you, or you can write the next chapter with intention, courage, and clarity. Legacy isn't about how many accolades we collect or how impressive our resume looks. It's about the moments no one else sees, the small acts of bravery, the quiet kindnesses, the times we showed up even when it was easier to hide. It's about living a life that, when reflected upon, doesn't just say they existed, but they truly lived. And here's the beautiful truth: it's never too late. No matter your age, your circumstances, your past regrets, you can start writing a chapter that matters. A chapter that reflects not just what you've done, but who you are at your core. A chapter that embodies your values, your passions, and your unique voice. So, I want you to pause for a moment and imagine your own story as a book. Flip forward to the final pages. What do you see? What do you want those pages to say about you? Not about what others thought, but about how you chose to live, to love, and to leave your mark. Because that vision, that clarity, is where your next chapter begins. Think about the life you're living right now. Not the one you tell others about, not the one that looks perfect on social media, not the one that ticks all the shoulds off the list, but the life you feel deep in your bones. Are you living it fully? Or are you drifting through days, letting fear, comparison, or the weight of expectations quietly dictate your choices? I want you to meet James. He was in his late 50s, sitting in a small circle during a workshop on courage and connection. James had spent decades climbing a corporate ladder, achieving milestones that everyone admired. But when he spoke, there was a tremor in his voice, a vulnerability that couldn't be hidden. He said, "I've been so busy building a life that looks good from the outside that I forgot to ask myself if it feels good on the inside. I don't even recognize the man I see in the mirror sometimes." Can you feel that? The ache of realizing that much of your life has been spent performing, not living, achieving, not experiencing, surviving, not thriving. It's not that James, or any of us, did anything wrong. We were simply following the map handed to us, thinking that if we checked enough boxes, life would eventually feel like ours. And here's the hard truth: that map rarely leads to fulfillment. Because life is not meant to be a series of obligations, achievements, or approvals. Life is meant to be lived messy, raw, imperfect, and extraordinary. True purpose comes when we stop trying to be everything for everyone else and start asking the questions that matter. What brings me joy? What makes me feel alive? What will I regret not doing when I look back? James realized that his next chapter wouldn't be written by continuing to chase titles, money, or recognition. It would be written by choosing courage over comfort, by being honest with himself about what he truly wanted, and by leaning into relationships, passions, and experiences that had been neglected for too long. And this is where most of us stumble. We confuse comfort for safety. We think that staying in the familiar, staying in control, staying responsible is the path to security. But real security, the kind that fills your soul, comes from daring to step into the unknown, from choosing meaning over ease, from being willing to let your heart guide your choices even when the outcome isn't guaranteed. Living with purpose is not about perfection. It's about clarity. Clarity of who you are, what matters to you, and how you want your life to ripple out into the world. And once you have that clarity, you realize that the next chapter is yours to write, and that every small choice, every brave word, every act of authenticity adds a line to the story you want to tell. Now let's talk about the moments that truly define a legacy. The ones that aren't in trophies, titles, or public accolades, but in the quiet, often invisible acts of courage, compassion, and connection. These are the moments that don't make headlines but make hearts remember. I want you to picture a woman named Sofia. She spent her life putting others first. She was the friend who always showed up, the daughter who never disappointed her parents, the colleague who carried everyone else's burdens at work. But she rarely paused to ask herself what she needed, what she wanted, or what she dreamed. One day, her granddaughter asked her, "Grandma, what's the bravest thing you've ever done?" And Sofia froze. She realized she didn't have a ready answer. She had spent so much time protecting others from disappointment, so much time avoiding failure, so much time shrinking herself to fit the world's expectations, that she had forgotten how to honor her own courage. That question stayed with her, echoing in quiet corners of her mind. What does it mean to live bravely? And here's the truth: living bravely doesn't mean performing grand gestures. It's not always a heroic act that everyone sees. Sometimes, bravery is as simple and profound as saying no to something that drains your soul, even when everyone expects you to say yes. Owning your truth, even when it's uncomfortable or inconvenient. Admitting when you're wrong, even when pride screams to stay silent. Choosing connection over judgment, vulnerability over armor. These acts may seem small in the moment, but over time, they become the threads of a legacy that matters. Not for the world, but for the people who truly see you, and most importantly, for yourself. Sofia began rewriting her story one brave choice at a time. She stopped overcommitting, she shared her dreams, she forgave herself for mistakes she had carried for decades, and she began to build meaningful experiences instead of just checking boxes. Slowly, the fear of judgment faded, replaced by a deep sense of alignment between her inner life and the life she was living outwardly. And that, my friend, is where the real work of legacy begins. It begins when you stop trying to impress the world and start living in a way that feels like you. The kind of life that, when reflected upon, brings a quiet smile of recognition from your own heart. Yes, that's who I was. That's who I chose to be. Because the most powerful legacy is not wealth, recognition, or approval. It's the courage to live fully, the generosity to love openly, and the vulnerability to embrace life even when it scares you. And when you start weaving those moments into your days, suddenly the story of your life begins to feel less like an obligation and more like a work of art, a story you are proud to tell. When we talk about legacy and living with purpose, it's easy to think about the distant future, as if it's something far away, waiting for us at the finish line. But the truth is, your legacy is being written right now in every choice, every conversation, every moment of courage or hesitation. I want you to imagine a man named Daniel. For years, he was trapped in a life that felt safe on the outside, but empty on the inside. He followed the rules, avoided conflict, and prioritized everyone else's happiness over his own. Then, one evening, he was sitting with his teenage daughter, watching her draw in her notebook, and she looked up and said, "Daddy, I want to be brave like you someday." Daniel felt a wave of panic. Brave. Could he even remember the last time he felt brave? For so long, he had hidden behind routines, comfort zones, and fear of judgment. And in that moment, he realized that if he wanted his daughter to see bravery in him, he had to start living it. Not tomorrow, not next month, but today. That's the thing about purpose. It is not something you chase after. It's something you step into. It begins when you make conscious choices to live aligned with your values. It grows when you prioritize what matters most to you over what others expect. It thrives when you are willing to show up, even when the outcome is uncertain, even when the world might not notice, even when it scares you. Your next chapter doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to be dramatic or revolutionary. It just has to be authentic. It just has to reflect the truth that you are here not merely to exist, but to matter. To yourself, to the people you love, and to the ripple effect your life creates in the world. And here's the profound part: the more you live this way, the more you inspire others to do the same. Your courage becomes contagious. Your vulnerability becomes a bridge. Your presence becomes a gift. And suddenly, the story you are writing isn't just about you. It's about a legacy of courage, authenticity, and love that will echo long after the last page is written. So ask yourself, what do I want my next chapter to say? And then take the first small step today. The step that aligns with your truth. The step that honors your heart. The step that begins to write a story you will be proud of for the rest of your life. Because your legacy is not in the past. It's in the choices you make right now. And the most powerful chapters are waiting for you to begin. Grab a piece of paper and write this question at the top. What do I want my next chapter to say? Then answer it, not as the person the world expects you to be, but as the person your soul is quietly begging you to become. Because your story isn't over. You are not too old. You are not too late. You are not too broken. You are simply turning the page. And maybe, just maybe, this next chapter will be the one where you finally live, not to be remembered, but to be fully alive. Soft outro music builds. If this message touched you today, take a deep breath and type in the comments, "My next chapter begins now." Because it does. And the world is waiting to read it.